I had the opportunity to sit down and interview TonyV, and do you feel that? I can tell there's a few sphincters that just tightened around the COH community. Now, before we even start off this video, I can tell that some people are starting to write comments. SB talked to TonyV, and now he's putting the conversation out there. He said that he's shooting these around so people can see what they're talking about. Well, if you look right here, you'll see that I actually did ask TonyV's permission after he and I spoke through the chat logs. So what I'm going to be doing in this video, and he said yes, by the way, you can read that. You can read that here on the side while I'm giving this introduction that he said to go ahead and do it. I'm going to read through everything over here in the order that it was said between the two of us. It is not my place to put words in TonyV's mouth or to try to say, I think this is what he meant or this is what he was trying to say. No. And it's also not my place to say extra information or add to my questions now when I didn't let TonyV know what my questions were. Starting from the beginning of our chat log. Hello, TonyV. I'm glad that you hopped in the Discord. Are you available to chat with me for a couple of minutes? We can talk here or in audio, whichever you prefer. TonyV says that he doesn't have a mic handy where he's at, but I did get your message via Twitter. How's it going? I told him I'm actually doing pretty well. I will be honest, I was sent a message on Discord and on Reddit, I think by the same person, who said there were a few reasons I should reach out to you. At the very least, I'm hoping that you can help inform me about a few things. It would be epic if you wanted to come on a podcast episode to give your first-hand accounts, but right now, I need to understand what's really going on without a narrative. Looking for the messages I got, and then I sent him the two photos that we see here, which says, hey bro, if you want a scoop, try to get TonyV to talk to you about Leo and Cypher. Ask him if it's true that Leo is the head of the LLC with Jimmy and Cypher, and he quit because of it. Ask him if it's true Homecoming banned him off their servers for not agreeing to keep Leo as the lead. Ask him if it's true he personally had contact with NCSoft and warned them to not make any deal with Cypher and Leo. He just found out that he can't even reply private messages in the Homecoming forum and is salty as fuck about it and willing to talk. He says the initial negotiations last year were real, but collapsed as soon as he left and Jimmy and Cypher have nothing. Believe him or not about the last part, but he's been talking a lot and is willing to expose Cypher as a fraud. And this is the message which I received on Discord at SPJimmy. Bro, you have to interview TonyV in your podcast, hear me out. He's just found out that Homecoming banned him so hard that he can't even reply to private messages in their forums and is salty as fuck. He personally sent a letter to NCSoft telling them to not trust Cypher, Jimmy, or Leo, and says his contact with NCSoft is a guy called Rich. He gave Cypher and Jimmy the NCSoft contact info, but when he realized they were going to keep Leo as the head of Homecoming, he quit and everything collapsed afterward. Leo wanted to do a lot of fuckery with the LLC money by filing as a charity, and TonyV quit because the IRS will shut the whole thing down on the first audit. He is sure NCSoft is no longer talking to them and is very willing to expose Leo as an egomaniac who wants to control everything. TonyV will not talk to you if you say you're Cox G, but he was bitching about having a book deal canceled because of Cypher, and he might be willing to expose everything if you ask him about that. He has screenshots of everything. Cheers, smiley face. Take a screenshot of this message. You have spies. Message will self-destruct in 1 minute. So after I showed TonyV the two messages in their entirety, he says, wow, that is an interesting take on things. I said, it is, and I don't want to jump to conclusions or say anything that is untrue or not supported by documents and facts. Tony responds, I mean, some of it's true. Some of it I can see how someone might think it's true, and some of it is, not so much. I respond, exactly. I don't want to use these messages as any form of proof, but it did alert me that now might be a good time for us to talk. I'm trying to be as well informed as I can, so anything I put out in future videos is not just my opinion. TonyV responds, so I have a dumb question, and I hope you'll forgive me because it's been a few months. I've really done nothing COH related, but I'm not really sure who you are. Can you give me the 30-second or so intro? And no, I don't have an axe to grind with the Cox G folks, in parentheses. I respond, sure thing, smiley face. I have been running a fully COH-based YouTube channel for around 7 months. I made 30 videos about HC, with builds, guides, etc. I then started doing podcasts where I interview members of the alternative servers team members. I am working with 4 to 5 other content creators to do COH comic book readings, live streams of PvP or AE events, and I have a lot more fun content planned. I released a video this morning where I listened to a 53-minute audio of Leo in the SEG's Discord and have people who were there give their first-hand accounts of that night. Reddit has banned 2 posts, only one was from me, of the video with that audio. And a couple weeks ago, my YouTube channel was directly attacked by downvote bots, racking up 52 downvotes in 2 hours until the YouTube algorithm removed the downvotes. People are coming to me with documents and information about Leo, GM Jimmy, and Cypher. Some are sharing personal doxing attack stories, which is the line I draw with every other content creator turning a blind eye. I then provided a direct link to my YouTube channel so he could see for himself. TonyV responds, "Hey, sorry, hang on a second, my sister is calling me on the phone. Okay, sorry about that, I had to get my daily coronavirus check-in, make sure everyone's still okay and all. I'm going to go get some water and I'll be back." I'm back. Geez, this is like the Wayback Machine. This seems like forever ago. I respond, haha, I'm sure. It's crazy for me to look back at old videos and see how far things have come. A lot of people don't like to dig up the past, but I feel that it is important to put out as much historical documentation as I can. TonyV responds, I probably won't be able to help much. It's been months since I've been involved in anything, and even when I was, it was a pretty stressful gig. Some of that stuff is true. For example, I've been banned from posting on the HC forums. I'm not, quote, salty as fuck about it, though I am not surprised about it. I only noticed it because recently someone pointed me to a post there, and when I read it, I noticed a, quote, you don't have access to post banner at the bottom. I hadn't actually visited their forums in a long time, so I have no idea when they locked me out of posting. It could have been a week ago or 3.5 months ago. I don't particularly care though. It's not like I have something I'm itching to tell them. So some of it is exaggeration. Like, I never hate the Cox G people. I was quite irate that someone made a server and basically said, hey, you can create a Hitler character. You can use the N-word. And I called that the, quote, KKK server. Because personal opinion of Tony is that when you create something like that, or for that matter, 4chan, in parentheses, you tend to attract the dregs of the internet, and whether you want it to or not, that's what it'll turn into. Some of it is completely irrelevant, such as the structure of Homecoming's organization. Anything I was privy to is woefully out of date, so it's kind of pointless rehashing who said what and when. What's important is how they plan to go forward, and to that I have no idea and can't help. We'll just have to wait and see. Quote, ask him if it's true that Leo is the head of the LLC with Jimmy and Cypher and he quit because of it. Tony says, I have no idea, but that's not quite why I quit. Tony quotes again, ask him if it's true Homecoming banned him off their servers for not agreeing to keep Leo as the lead. Tony continues, they couldn't really ban me off their game servers because I never registered an account on Homecoming. It is true that I'm banned from posting on their forums, see above. I have no idea why they did, you'd have to ask them that. They never warned me or gave me any explanation, and I never asked. I responded to TonyV saying, to be honest, I want to be able to do more than speculate. I believe that if people could have a better idea of the process and efforts that you went through, it might help people in general be less on edge, myself included. For my own peace of mind, if you can share your first-hand experiences, we can help viewers to form concrete visualization. Considering nobody really knows what, quote, talks with NC Soft means or what those conversations looked like. TonyV says, I can't say much, to be honest, and really anything I can't say would be really anticlimactic. There's not really much that isn't already known publicly. NCSoft is pondering the possibility of allowing a community-run group a license to run servers. That's the general gist of what the talks are about. The rest are details, and I don't want to get into details because, one, even if I was involved, those details were very fluid, changing on a day-by-day basis. So anything I said would be woefully out of date, and two, I don't want to undercut anyone's ability to iron out those details without throngs of people yelling and screaming about what they think is critical and what is totally unimportant. And three, even if I could convey an accurate picture of what those details are today, they may very well change on the whim of the winds tomorrow, and then you and I and everyone else involved would be accused of lying for some obviously nefarious purpose. In parentheses, sorry, that's probably not as salty as you were hoping, and then he gave me a winky face. I respond, no, it's quite alright. If anything, I'm relieved. I didn't want you to be upset, and I was a little worried I would have been causing frustration by asking. If it's anything to you, I don't actually even know the guy who sent those messages. I wanted to make sure everything was okay, but I'm not trying to reopen any old wounds. It's relieving what you said because it's not known publicly. They don't say anything. So it's some peace of mind knowing there's something concrete to it, one way or another. On my channel, all I ask is that my guests share their first-hand experiences. The worst thing I can do is give into speculation if I don't have a credible source or concrete documentation and facts to back me up. It is my responsibility to give as much coverage as I can to every server for the love and respect that I have for COH. I think that it is important to talk about what has happened in the past, not, quote, everything that has happened needs to be brought up again, but at least the milestones and to inform the general player base, not just those who frequent the forums and discords. Any other video game would be getting tons of coverage about this, but right now, for COH, I'm the only one standing up to speak about it. About 15 minutes later, I asked TonyV, would you mind if I asked you some specific questions? Bluntly. TonyV says, you can, but I'm not sure how helpful I can be. So I asked TonyV, what did the talks with NCSoft, quote, look like? Was it phone calls, emails, a Discord? I'm not quite clear. TonyV says, phone calls and emails. I respond, okay, so there would not be a, quote, secret Discord for talks with lawyers, parentheses, whether or not they are NCSoft lawyers. TonyV says, not that I'm aware of, but again, I haven't been involved in this since sometime back in November, I think. What Homecoming is doing now, I have no idea. Parentheses, and don't read anything positive or negative into that. I literally mean I don't know. I respond, thank you. I understand that this is dated information, but it is more than I've ever had. How much do you trust Cypher and the leadership in Homecoming? Did they make their intentions about the server clear? TonyV says, that I'm going to have to choose not to answer. Quote, trust is a loaded word that delves into speculations and opinions, and there's never a good answer to that question. There are very few people that I implicitly trust, generally after years of being involved with them in various capacities. I trust Sequoia of the Titan Network because I've known him, it seems like, forever. Anywhere else on that spectrum lies madness, because anything short of full implicit trust begs the question, quote, well, why don't you trust them? What would you do, parentheses, or would you not trust them to do, yada, yada, yada? I respond, that's a reasonable answer. I guess what I mean is, did Leo and Cypher lie to you about their intentions with the server? TonyV says, I can't answer that. I'm not trying to be coy, but I'm not a mind reader. You'd have to ask Leo and Cypher that question. I don't think they're collecting user data to sell commercially, if that's what you mean. As far as I know, their ultimate intention is to have a sanctioned place where people can play City of Heroes. Anything beyond that is in, quote, we'll have to wait and see territory. I follow up. It's known that Leo had data from Live. Can you confirm if 1, there was a keylogger in the Score manifest, 2, does Homecoming's manifest, which was taken from Score, contain that keylogger, or be collecting more than the necessary IP information? Unless I'm mistaken at some point there, please let me know. TonyV responds, to my knowledge, no and no. In fact, knowing the people I know who were involved in Score, they would have actively and vehemently fought against this kind of asshattery. Many of these people were borderline paranoics. Collecting extra data would have been anathema to them, and frankly, would have made it completely impractical to participate in the project. To the best of my knowledge, they actively worked to strip out data collection functionality. Having said that, I never personally saw the code, so I can only tell you about the people, not the software. I will show you close-ups of these 2 images, but the question I had with them was, the first photo is Leo's spiderweb of information that he would use on members of the Score team to not only ban them, but anyone they brought in. I have been told on multiple accounts that Leo had email and credit card data, at least from Live, if not from Score as well. Leo was able to dox someone I talked to and threatened him IRL. The second photo is confirmation that the Homecoming manifest was renamed from Score. Can you speak to any of this? This is the first image that I sent to TonyV. It might be a little bit hard to see over the computer, but it says girlfriend, wife, boyfriend around this is the spider web, and the information on the text coincides with what is being posted in the images here. All of the photos that we've seen today, along with my entire chat with TonyV, is available in the archive section of the ThunderSpy Gaming Discord. I don't want to link their Discord directly here for the flood of spam that might follow, but if you are truly interested, you can find that Discord easily enough online or post it in my channel, or come on into the SP Jimmy Discord. My Discord will be linked in the description below, and you can redirect from there. The second photo that I sent to TonyV is on the COH General channel from number 6. It says, Rickus, unfortunately all the files have to be re-downloaded. The content directory was renamed from, quote, score to, quote, homecoming, to avoid getting the wires crossed with some other projects that are using the, quote, score files for themselves without renaming them. After I sent the 2 photos to TonyV, I put in parentheses at the bottom, I'm just trying to be thorough. You're the only person who was on the HC team who will talk to me. I'm not accusing you of anything. TonyV responds, I honestly can't. Email data wouldn't surprise me. At the Titan Network, we had people's email data so that they could do things like reset their passwords, but credit card data, I'd be extremely surprised at that, because it would be grossly out of character for anyone I know who was involved in SCORE. So far as I can recall, Leo was taking donations via PayPal, so he wouldn't have had access to credit card info to process payments himself. As I recall from Paragon Studios developers, the payment processing systems for City of Heroes were completely separate, parentheses, geographically and corporately, from any kind of account or game servers. So just from a logistical standpoint, I seriously doubt that Leo ever had pre-shutdown billing info. As for SCORE/Homecoming overlap, I really don't have a clue. It would make sense since Leo was involved in both SCORE and the development of Homecoming. As far as I know, they both use the same launcher, so yeah, that probably makes sense. But again, I never saw the code, and I was never involved in the infrastructure side of things, so ... shrug emoji. I respond, Leo says in his own words that his original copy of the code, which he cut up, contained information that would allow anyone with it to look up, quote, sexy cat girl that they played with and get their information. But that was for players on live. I was concerned that Leo, GM Jimmy, and or Cypher were still privy to that information for their players now on Homecoming. Parentheses, that's my last question about code.
Login name, the account name, like not the global name, the account name is one of the fields because that's how you link the characters together. So I need to hash that, or I need to do something because somebody who wants to know who the hot, sexy cat girl on Virtue was can maybe find out who their name is based on the account name.
TonyV says, probably their account information, not their billing information. I'm not saying that it's impossible. Just from what I know how the servers were set up pre-shutdown and who managed it, it's highly unlikely. I'm not trying to convey that I'm an expert on NCSoft's internal controls, but I used to be over server administration at a major company's data center, and I've always been a technical wonk wanting to know everyone's business. At the Player Summit, I spent some time grilling the devs and admins about their environment because I was curious how a large MMORPG managed things like that. Again, I'm not a definitive expert because I have never had access to their systems. But from what they described, no one at Paragon Studios even had access to the billing info. And no one at NCSoft Corporate had access to the game's databases. They talked through an interface in such a deliberate way that no one would have had access to both. But keep in mind that you can dox someone with just the account info. I mean, if you know someone's account name and email address, you can easily find out all sorts of stuff about them by searching social media and whatnot. And that's assuming he had the original account databases, which is speculation on my part. I just remember that some people were able to import their characters on the SCORE servers. The character database may not have even had account info. If Leo says he could find someone, then you need to ask him about those details, because I really don't know. I continue to ask Leo, can you speak to this photo, which shows Michael D. Cullen accuses Cypher of collecting massive amounts of personal information, including hardware profiles and IP? In this photo, from top to bottom, number 1 says in a Discord chat, and currently we don't have anything other than performance data. Michael D. Cullen, at Cypher, you're collecting massive amounts of PII, specifically the hardware profiles and IP addresses of every single player that has ever connected to the server, full chat logs, etc. Draith Darkstar says, yes, exactly. I'm trying to establish whether or not Cypher's servers will help the open source project. Michael D. Cullen responds, you're not doing so deliberately, but it's being done. Cypher says the only thing collected is what the server requires to operate. Number 1 says, just don't worry about that, at Draith Darkstar. Cypher responds, we are not collecting anything that is not absolutely necessary on a technical level for the servers to work. Michael D. Cullen responds at the bottom, at Cypher, again, that's not true. I have issue 25 binaries right here, and I know exactly what's getting logged. TonyV says, I don't know who Michael D. Cullen is, and I have no idea what he's referring to. I've literally never once logged into Homecoming, and I was never privy to the code it ran on. I respond, okay, thank you. You have been more than generous in answering my questions. A touchy subject is Homecoming's donations. How much went to lawyer fees and how much, if any, went to fund SCORE? I was told that Mercedes L, I won't say her last name, was funding or handling SCORE's money. If not her, then the mother of Chloe, who Leo speaks about in the audio MP3 as a terrible, sad tale with loss of life, who was a, quote, artist who used to be a mod on the COH subreddit, until everything with SCORE came out and she left that position. Can you speak to any of that? Or are you familiar with their server costs? TonyV says, SCORE was self-sufficient. No Homecoming money went towards it, at least not while it was operating in secret. Homecoming wasn't created until after SCORE was revealed, and it wasn't the same set of people involved in running it. To be honest, since then, I don't know what happened to SCORE. If it was absorbed by Homecoming, then it wouldn't surprise me if HC were indirectly funding it today, as they're funding all of their up and running servers. But I don't know. You'd probably get much better answers from Leo and or Cypher and Jimmy. I don't know who handled SCORE's donation money. I assume it was Leo himself, remotely, via a PayPal account, but I don't know. I left Homecoming prior to us nailing down the financial part of the organization. I follow up. My understanding was that Leo was a, quote, consultant for Homecoming, maybe officially part of their team at one point, but now he has been, quote, booted out and is back to running SCORE. That is recent news you probably had no part in. TonyV responds, yeah, I don't want to comment on Homecoming's organizational structure, in that I have no idea what it is now. I respond, that's understandable. Can you explain your post on the Titan Network forum about why you stepped down and gave Homecoming your project that you had been working on for 7 years? Were you told to step away from talks? TonyV replies, to do that, you have to understand that there's a difference between wanting to bring back City of Heroes and to actually run City of Heroes. My goal was never to personally run the game. It never occurred to me that I could be involved in running the game. I always just assumed that, quote, bringing it back would involve either NCSoft itself, some other game company, or the community running the game. I'd make a terrible game runner, because the way I like to play is far different from how I think your average schmo likes to play the game. If I were king of COH, I'd do stuff like heavily nerf anything remotely farmable, for example. So when you say, quote, my project, I want to be clear. My, quote, project was to save COH. That's all. So when given an opportunity of making that happen, of course I jumped at it. I was willing to do anything I could to bring the game back. As secondary goals, I wanted to ensure that it was in such a way that it didn't have to stay secret and hidden, that players wouldn't have to worry about their server suddenly being taken offline by a C and D order. thus the need to talk to NCSoft. As long as these servers were running illegally, that was a possibility with NCSoft being on board, so there you go, Tony got involved with the talks. Incidentally, as a third goal, I wanted to basically provide a blueprint for other MMORPG companies to use to ensure that when they're ready to sunset a game, they could do so in such a way as to not appear to kick their communities who have been supporting them for years to the curb. That's where the quote book deal thing came in. At one point, I offhandedly mentioned that when I was said and done. I might write a book about how MMORPGs shut down, the fallout of it from the perspective of players, developers, and the companies that run them, and using City of Heroes as a concrete example to form a narrative, how it could be done better. I never had any kind of, quote, book deal. It was just a thought, and it amuses me that someone interpreted that as any kind of factor in what was going on, or that I was sore because it didn't come to fruition. At worst, my thought about it was, quote, oh well, guess it won't happen. That's a shame. I think it would have been a really interesting read. I respond by saying, thank you for answering that in depth. That makes a lot more sense. If I may ask, when people learned about Score's existence, were you asking for money? TonyV says, at any rate, yes, Jimmy and Cypher asked me to step down from the talks with NCSoft. In a nutshell, we reached an impasse regarding the organizational structure they were proposing, and it got to the point where either I was going to have to leave, and knowing that we had incompatible visions, use what influence I had to try to steer them in a better direction, or, to be blunt, attempt a wholesale coup of homecoming. If you read the above goals again, you'll see that the choice was obvious, so I left. Whether I was right or wrong, I suppose we'll have to wait and see, but obviously I think I was right, and that I kept Homecoming from making some mistakes that could have ultimately cost the community the game. Had I not believed that, I probably would have just disappeared quietly and let events run their course. Just as obviously, there are people out there who think I was wrong. I can't speak for them or their viewpoint, only my own. I'm not going to try to trash them. And I'm not, quote, salty about it. All I want is for people in the community, especially if and when a deal goes through, to stay involved, to demand transparency and accountability. That doesn't mean to scream, off with their heads, over any stupid little thing, but just, keep their finger on the pulse of Homecoming and be an active part of its continued existence. And no, I never asked for money. Unless you count having a donation link on the Titan network to help defray some of the hosting costs. But we even took that down to avoid any perception of impropriety, once we became involved in the talks with NCSoft. That's been a frequent misconception with the Titan network. People confuse us with City of Titans, the crew that ran the Kickstarter way back when. We actively supported that Kickstarter, but we are not them and they are not us. We never received 1 cent of that Kickstarter money because we're two completely separate things. Same with Score. Score initially started off as a forum on our site, but after a while they broke off and went their own way. The Titan network never received a penny of the money that was donated to the Score private server. Now, the Titan network and Homecoming are being run as two complete separate entities. And the Titan network is not using any money donated by people to Homecoming. In short, the only money we've ever taken are small donations to cover hosting. On a very, very few occasions, parentheses like once or twice, someone donated $100 or $200, but most months we didn't receive any donations at all. I was paying the hosting costs, around $130 per month, plus yearly DNS, registration fees, and SSL cert fees, out of my own pocket. I'm not trying to sound like a martyr, but it was important for me to keep the Titan network independent and free of any ads or trackers, and I make decent money at my day job, so I really didn't mind. I take that back. One user set up a recurring donation of $5 per month through PayPal. If you're that user reading or hearing this, you know who you are, and I know who you are, and I really do appreciate that consistent donation. Over the course of the lifetime of the donation, parentheses, I canceled it once Titan started working with Homecoming, it totaled probably $200 or so in all. It just meant a lot to me that someone cared enough about the sites to do that. Smiley face emoji. The next question that I asked was, are you familiar with the fact that Homecoming is a for-profit LLC, limited liability company, and not a non-profit organization? The server costs don't seem to add up. Are the additional costs to try and entice NCSoft or show proof of financial stability of the game? $6,000 plus for 5 servers seems a little high, especially for OVH. TonyV responds, question 1, yes, I'm aware of that. Tax laws regarding nonprofits are, let's just say, complex. You can't go plant a flag, declare, I'm a nonprofit, and off to the races you go. So the only real choices at the time were an LLC or just having one person basically own everything and receive all of the donations and pay all of the costs, him or herself, which would have really weird and undesirable income tax ramifications. So a for-profit LLC it is. But keep in mind that a not-for-profit and a non-profit company do not have the same legal meaning. You can be a for-profit LLC and operate in a not-for-profit capacity, which is what Homecoming does. Question 2, and the server costs do add up. The resources to run City of Heroes, especially at the scale that Homecoming does, are astronomical. Most people grossly overestimate it because they don't take into account how expensive high-end data center server cycles are, let alone redundancy, backups, power, bandwidth, software expenses, etc. Believe me, I questioned this myself and I saw an itemized list of expenses. I will personally vouch for the fact that it really is that expensive to run that stuff. People have tried to run it on high-end personal workstation hardware, and when they did, the result was a slideshow for even small numbers of players. I respond, are you aware that the other servers using OVH have servers that can host a single server that can hold the population of one of Homecoming servers for $200 a month, with backups and the same amount of bandwidth, and actively are? TonyV replies, that's simply not true. I can't give you exact numbers, but the number of concurrent users on a Homecoming server is regularly in the thousands, at least an order of magnitude over the maximum concurrence on any other server out there. You absolutely, positively must account for that, and City of Heroes doesn't exactly scale gracefully. I'm not going to elaborate on this, but if you want a technical source, try pinging this dude. And then Tony links me to the Homecoming forums where I can get in contact with number 6. TonyV says, I was there shortly after Homecoming spun up their first server. I saw firsthand the beating the servers were taking on hardware that was $200 a month. Then the beating they took on hardware that was $1,000 a month. Then the beating they took on hardware that was $3,000 a month, and so on. They really aren't trying to pull a fast one over on anyone. Can it support the player base on $1,000 a month hardware? Yeah, like at 5 a.m. But for peak hours, not even remotely close. Just to emphasize again, I wasn't involved in actually running the server, but I was on the Discord and I saw the issues they had. Look back in the early days of the forums and you'll probably get an idea of how much trouble they had as the user base exponentially increased. I reply, my understanding was that their test revealed a single server can hold 871 players comfortably, which is twice the population on some of the servers used by Homecoming. Thank you for the link, by the way. I will definitely reach out to them. TonyV says, I really don't have anything else to say about that. If you want more info, you'll have to ping the technical team of Homecoming. I'm just saying that while I was involved, those really were the server costs. There was no money being skimmed off or shuffled towards other purposes. I always know there was a lot of talk on, as soon as feasible, rewriting some of the server code to run on more commodity hardware so that it wasn't so expensive. And then he corrects, and software. For example, Linux and PostgRE SQL instead of Windows and SQL Server. I follow up. There are rumors circulating that Homecoming stole the EULA of Lineage 2 and replaced bits and pieces of the ULA with their own terms and names. It was lifted almost verbatim on closer inspection. In order to do that legally, they would have had to be speaking with the Lineage 2 team and the lawyers involved with that. Could you inform me if they spoke to the Lineage 2 team, or are they committing a serious felony? TonyV says, I wasn't involved in the ULA at all, and I have no idea where it came from or who came up with it. I say, thank you so much for answering all of my questions. I do have one more. Is it okay with you if I share our conversation and make a YouTube video where I can read through what we talked about? I think it would be a great piece of documentation for what people have been asking about for months. My goal is not to disparage anyone, but to take the information as it was presented to me and make it available. TonyV says, sure, but with one qualification, and that is, I don't know who's trying to stir the pudding here, but I kinda hope they'll stop. I'm not, quote, salty as fuck over anything at this point. I'm not even mad. It's more like, Homecoming wants to run with this thing, and my part in all this is done. So let them have at it. I get that folks are curious, and I get that they want to know everything now. But seriously, things are about as good as they can get. People are playing the game again. There's a decent chance that they'll be able to indefinitely. I mean, just 1 year ago, could you imagine telling anyone that and someone being discontent with that knowledge? Yet someone is trying to undermine Homecoming, and I don't want to be part of that. I haven't been holding that torch for 7 years, just to try to snuff it out now. If someone has a problem with Homecoming, then for the love of all that's holy, take it up with Homecoming. Or take it up with the community. Don't try to fight these battles through a proxy, especially one who no longer has sway with Homecoming or NC Soft. KKK servers aren't cool, otherwise I don't have an axe to grind, just, go hunt and kill skulls and stuff. I reply, I would also show the initial messages that I got so your reactions make sense. I get contacted frequently by people who have legitimate concerns, wild speculation, and plenty who would love nothing more than to watch the world burn. It is my job right now to present as accurate information as I can and speak with people who were there or are in the know. I can't express enough how much I appreciate you taking the time today to give me your best answers. Tony says, okay. I think they're posted on Reddit or some public place anyway, so at this time I don't think they're state secrets. I say, I think that this is going to be very good both for the community in general and for my own knowledge. TonyV says, I doubt it. Haters gonna hate, lovers gonna love. Everyone will read into this exactly what they thought before. At least, that's been my experience. I think that ultimately, it will just be a matter of actually seeing how this all plays out. Parentheses, and then everyone will descend back into arguing again. Internet, right? In the last message in our conversation, I say, I don't know what people make of my videos. I cover each of the servers equally. Parentheses, Homecoming has the most videos. But people assume I belong to ThunderSpy and think that Brain oversees me. Nobody tells me what content I can and cannot create. I make videos that I would like to watch. My co-host Normal Guy is a mod both on T-Spy and on Rebirth. I'm reaching out to the Unity server in the UK. Rebirth will have another sit-down with LB and Hatghost once I finish editing it, and I already interviewed Zeraphis and Wretched from Rebirth. But people will say what they want and try to get a rise out of me.